Oh, good morning again.
Morning.
It's been said that a specialist is someone who eventually gets to know so much about one particular thing, he knows everything about nothing. And then a generalist, on the other hand, over the period of time, in wanting to know so much about everything, knows nothing about everything. I want to talk today a little bit about knowing versus just being and doing. Being and doing in the mystery in which we find ourselves. One of my favorite television shows is Naked and Afraid on the Discovery Channel. And it's not that the people are naked, I don't care if they're dressed, but I love the challenges that they're put to. Um, I got into backpacking a number of years ago. I was planning on backpacking Isle Royal and did a lot of reading. You know, you got to read things to learn about stuff and know what to expect. And of course, as it turned out, I started backpacking um, um, and took way too much stuff with me because I thought I knew better. And you learn through experience. And on Naked and Afraid, I especially like the superfan challenges, where rather than going for 3 weeks, they go for 2 weeks. These are people who really don't have much experience, but they watch the show and they read about survival techniques. They know about this stuff. And I'm going to show those people how to do it. And a good majority of them, usually the men, I hate to admit this, but usually the men turn out to be the weaker ones, give up. And they say, I can't believe. I thought I knew what to do, and all of a sudden I'm confronted with reality. The context is different than just sitting in your living room watching television. The conditions are entirely different. And they say, man, this stuff is real all of a sudden. And they turn around and go home. They tap out. So many people, so many of us think that it's what we know that gives us our wherewithal to handle life properly. And I would argue it's not necessarily what it is that we know, but it's what we do with what we know and what we don't do with what we know. As many of you know, I've told you before, as bishop of our America Europe parish and as abbot of just this local Zen temple here, I get a lot of in emails from people who are inquiring about either the Tego order or just about the temple, who we are, what do we believe in? And it's amazing how many of these people want to know, what do we believe about Nagarjuna? What do we believe about the two truth theory? What do we believe about all these doctrinaire things? And it's like, who gives a damn what we believe? You know, but they've got to know before they're interested in joining the Tego order or before they're interested in coming to Muddy Waters and for some relief from suffering, they've got to know what it is that we believe about all of these obscure philosophical Buddhist doctrines. And as many of you know, because I've told you this before, what I tell them is crawl out of your damn head, sit on your butt, get into your heart, and just meditate. Be with the discomfort. Be with the pain of meditating. Be with the boredom of meditating. Be with confronting your deep self that wants certainty in everything and realize that life is uncertain. The only certainty, I don't even think it's taxes because I don't even pay all my taxes, which is why I'm in trouble now. But death is certain. That much is certain. That I know for sure. And it just amazes me that people have to know all of this stuff. Back in the medieval times, and if any of you grew up Catholic, Roman Catholic at all? Okay, yeah. So I don't know if any of you have ever heard of the scholastics back in the medieval times, like Duns Scotus and Thomas Aquinas. You know, they're these priest philosophers, if you will, very, very intelligent men who did some really deep thinking and tried to resolve the issues between classical philosophy and Trinitarian Christian theology. And sometimes, man, they'd go down some really deep, winding rabbit holes and come up with some really obscure stuff that, in terms of people's salvation, didn't mean a darn thing. And in fact, there were a number of Christians during that time and later when the Protestant Reformation started to come about, and they felt that men like this were so concerned with, for instance, how many angels can dance on the head of a pin? How many angels can dance on the head of the pin while the devil's out there trying to play grab ass with your soul? What does it matter how many angels can dance on the head of a pin? It doesn't. And even in Shakyamuni's time, the historical Buddha's time, he had monks who said, you know, unless you tell me this, or unless you tell me that about these deep metaphysical issues, I don't want to follow you, or I'm going to leave you. And I want to read you from the Majjhima Nikaya, the middle-length sermons or discourses, number 63 here. Here we go. The Chula Malunkyya Sutta. And this is a shorter discourse that the Buddha offers to the monk Malunkyya Buddha. So if you'll put your hands in Hap Chong, this is maybe a page and a half long. Just listen closely. So when the Venerable Malunkyya Buddha was alone in meditation in the forest, the following thought arose in his mind. These speculative views that have left undeclared and unexplained by the Blessed One, set aside and rejected by him, namely, the world is eternal versus the world is not eternal, or the world is finite versus the world is infinite. The soul is the same as the body versus the soul is one thing and the body is another. And after death, a Tathagata exists, or after death, a Tathagata does not exist. Or after death, a Tathagata both exists and doesn't exist. Or after death, a Tathagata neither exists nor doesn't exist. The Blessed One doesn't tell me these things, and I don't approve of this, nor do I accept the fact that he doesn't declare these to me. So I shall go to him and ask him the meaning of this. And if he declares to me that he does not know, I will abandon the training and return to the low life, the secular life. Continues on the next page. This is the Buddha speaking. Suppose, Malunkyya Buddha, a man were wounded by an arrow thickly smeared with poison, and his friends and his companions, his kidmen, his relatives, they brought a surgeon to treat him. And the man says, I won't let that surgeon pull out this arrow until I know whether the guy who wounded me was a nobleman or Brahmin, a merchant or a worker. And he would say, I won't let that surgeon pull out the arrow until I know the name of the clan of the man who wounded me, until I know whether the man who wounded me was tall or short or of middle height, until I know whether the man who wounded me was dark or brown or golden skin, until I know whether he lived in a village or a town or a city, until I know whether that bow that wounded me was a long bow or a crossbow, until I know whether that bowstring that wounded me was a fiber or a reed or sinew or hemp or bark, until I know whether the shaft that wounded me was wild or cultivated, until I know with what kind of feathers that shaft that wounded me was fitted. Was it peacock, a stork, a heron, or a hawk? Whether that, until I know what kind of arrow it was that wounded me, whether it was hoof-tipped or curved or barbed or calf-toothed or oleander. And this still would not all be known by the man, and meanwhile he would lay there and die. Goes on the next page. The Buddha says, why have I left that undeclared, Malunkyya Buddha? Because it is unbeneficial. It doesn't belong to the fundamentals of the holy life. It doesn't lead to disenchantment, to dispassion, to cessation, to peace, to direct knowledge, to enlightenment, to nibbana. That's why I've left it undeclared. What have I declared? I have declared that this is suffering. This is the origin of suffering. This is the cessation of suffering. This is the way leading to the cessation of the suffering. That's what I've declared. And why have I declared that exactly? Because it's beneficial. It belongs to the fundamentals of the holy life. It leads to disenchantment, to dispassion, to cessation, to peace, to direct knowledge, to enlightenment, to nibbana. Here ends the reading. Life is not clean and clear cut. Life is messy. As any of you know who have lost a job because it's been sent overseas, or you've gone through a divorce, or you've had a loved one close to you who's died, knowing all these words in this book is not going to save your soul. It's not going to do it. The only thing that's going to save you is if you've been practicing, if you've been meditating, if you've been doing prostrations, getting yourself prepared. In Alcoholics Anonymous, there's kind of a saying that goes around. And, if you're not drinking anymore, you're staying sober, why should you go to meetings? Why should you gather with people of like-minded influences or practices? Why should you do that? It's like putting money in the bank so that you've got something to draw upon when times get tough, when you're challenged again. We offer meditation here on Tuesdays, on Thursdays. We have retreats on the third Friday. And yet we don't have people who want to partake in that stuff. They're Buddhists, or they want to be Buddhists. And maybe they're practicing at home much more than I'm aware of. But if they're anything like me, the way I used to be, when you're by yourself, it's like easy to just let it go, turn on the TV, listen to the radio, ride your bike, do something else. So we offer these group practices to try and influence one another, to help one another along. And I hope more of you would start to take advantage of these opportunities that we offer. That's why we're here, so that we can do this together. Life is messy. But the Buddha taught us a way to walk into that mess, walk through that mess, come out of it changed, but not so badly damaged emotionally as we would be otherwise. Thank you.